Yes, there's a great awakening going on. All these ancient civilizations have spoke about a wheel of time, a cycle of time, and we happen to be on the upturn in consciousness. So there's an evolution occurring. And as that happens, a lot of old systems need to crumble. They can't be taken into the new world. So a lot of things that we've identified with and labeled in this reality, and that we've literally put our whole heart and soul into, that doesn't serve this collective shift, is leaving.
Hi, everybody. I'm Lisa Wetzel, and thank you for joining me today. I am so excited to have Neil Gar with me today. And Neil is going to be a fellow presenter at the Channel Panel in Princeton, West Virginia on November 14th through the 16th. So, Neil, thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me, Lisa. It's good to be here with you.
Yeah, I'm excited to chat with you. Neil is an amazing individual that has so much information, and his resume is so long that I'm not going to review it with you, but I'm going to let Neil do it, explain a little bit more about what he does and who he is in just a moment. But what I do want to go over is what we're going to talk about today. There is so much craziness that's going on in the world at this time that I thought that it was really important for us to kind of talk about, about what's happening at this time, what's going on with extraterrestrials, because we're hearing a lot about extra help that we were having at this time, frequencies, dimensions, matrices, and anything else that might come up. So, Neil, would you mind giving us a little bit of background on who you are and how you came into this crazy life?
Sure. So, I feel, as you probably already feel the same way, that a lot of us, if not all of us, that are in this work were definitely destined before we came here. We chose to come down and do it. And in this life, I would say in the early years, I felt there was something a little off in the world. Things just didn't seem quite right if I was to reflect back in my childhood. And now I always got to put a disclaimer here. That was kind of maybe a catalyst for me to start some deep searching. I've come full circle now, and I feel everything has just been exactly the way it should have been. you know, but as I was growing up, I was raised in a Hindu family. My family's Hindu. I'm from India. I was born in England. I was surrounded with Hindu belief systems. I was going to temple. I was singing the songs there, and I really just never firmly believed in anything. It wasn't there was like I was doing all these rites and rituals, but there wasn't any concrete existential experience when it came to it. Like, what is God? Why are we praying? What are we saying to God? How is it going to help us? It was just a bunch of words and community. That was what temple and culture really was all about. So so even though I came full circle again later in life to understand the deeper truths of Hinduism, as a child, it wasn't really a part of my the profound. I didn't the profundity. If is that a word, profundity? The
It
profoundness.
is now.
Yeah, I just created it. The profoundness, let's just say, of that wisdom never hit me. And then when I turned 17, 18 years old, when I graduated high school in 2000, I started I started looking for what I call the root of all religion, and that's how it all started for me. And the reason why I was looking for the root of all religion is because as I was being raised, I was, celebrating Christmas with my family, living in England. A lot of Indian people do. I knew about Moses. I watched Moses movies so many times. And you might even wonder, why is this Hindu person watching movies on Israeli prophets and on Christian prophets, right? And it was just a common thread. And so I started having those thoughts in myself, like, why am I like, it's so interesting because Christianity, I had found out a lot of the fundamental Christians believe that Hinduism is of the devil because of their belief system around monotheism compared to not so monotheistic polytheism, even though Hinduism technically isn't really polytheistic. And so I was like, why is it okay for me to believe in them and believe these beings existed, these people came to Earth, but they believe that they're the only way, and everything that our culture has is actually a representation of the devil. So I started wondering that, and soon after I had that thought, I found similarities between Krishna and Jesus Christ, Yeshua. And I was started having a moment here. This is one of the probably the first existential crisis where I was like, whoa, wait a second. Not only do they say they're not the same religion, like I went to Catholic school for 1 year. The Catholic teacher kept telling me that they're separate religions. They monotheism and polytheism both grew separately from each other, right? So because of that, but I'm finding out that Krishna's story is the same as Jesus' story, but Krishna's story is older than Jesus is. So maybe Christianity came from Hinduism, you know? So that's what started me looking for the root of all religion when I was 18. And then it went into finding the Sumerian scriptures, the Egyptian texts, and then comparing a bunch of different religious texts around the world, and that immediately took me into not only ancient history and connecting the dots, it took me into, were these beings visitors from the stars and not the gods that we said they are? Because the further you go back, the more celestial, cosmic, planetary, intergalactic these stories become, right? Space travel, beings from this planet. This is the source text of all religion. And that started my, search down the rabbit hole, 2001. And I'll just fast forward a bunch of years, 2001 to 2006, deep down the rabbit hole, a lot of conspiracies, following bloodlines, ET stuff. 2006 is when I created the online group 2012 Consciousness, Mind, Evolution, and Presence. And over 2 years, it morphed as I spiritually evolved. And in 2008, it became Portal to Ascension. And then I started Portal to Ascension ever since, and been doing, a lot of events at this point, well over probably like over 5,000 events, I would say, that I've done since 2008, and worked with thousands of speakers. And we're continuing to grow now.
Yeah. So Portal of
Hmm.
Ascension is
Portal
it's
2, yeah.
actually it's an event production company. Is that
Yes.
what it is? Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so that's just the most third dimensional way of explaining what it is to people without, because like that's like the linear way, but then there's the creative way of like what we do and why we do it, right? And so
Uh-huh.
we are an event production organization for consciousness, and the reason why I say that is every single type of a production that you could create for a conscious event, where we've either done or are in the process of doing. So when it comes to conferences, cruises, retreats to ancient sites, breath work workshops, author tours around the world, expos, online webinars, documentaries, music record label. So it's like all of those things. Um, and to be honest, it's a way that I found to channel ADHD into something, into something where I'm able to do so many different things.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I love it because it's a gift to all of us to be able to have a way to tap into the things that are calling us or that we're curious about. So, thank you for creating this beautiful portal. So, okay, so let's get down to the nitty gritty. The we're going through a crazy time right now. There's
Mhm.
lots of chaos that's going on the earth, and there's lots of stories, lots of channeled messages, lots of beliefs and different things that are being said that are happening. I'm curious to know, what do you think is happening right now?
Yeah. So what I feel we're at in this moment is, let's get a little bit on the practical level, right? Yes, there's a great awakening going on. All these ancient civilizations have spoke about a wheel of time, a cycle of time, and we happen to be on the upturn in consciousness. So there's an evolution occurring. And as that happens, a lot of old systems need to crumble. They can't be taken into the new world. So a lot of things that we've identified with and labeled in this reality, and that we've literally put our whole heart and soul into, that doesn't serve this collective shift, is leaving, and a lot of us have identified with it so deeply that it might be a little hard. But what's happening right now is that in the next few years, there's going to be not only a shift technologically, not only a mass transparency or disclosures of hidden programs, secrets. A lot of secrets are going to be coming out, including a lot of technologies and black budget technologies that have been, quite openly spoken about now in Congress and all over the world, to declassify documents of technologies that are beyond anything that we've seen on this planet, that are actually influenced and connected to visitations from beings from the stars. So what I think we're heading is, in the next 2 years, 2027 really feels like we're ramping up for that. There's going to be there's going to be a moment where everybody on the planet, the first step, everybody on the planet knows we're not alone in the universe. Okay, because that's the shift in consciousness. It's different. Say in 2 years, say that we just kept going the status quo right now. In 2 years they land, and then but we're at the same level where nobody understands that we're not alone. So the first step is to just inform the masses. Second step is open contact, and that goes in alignment with what's happening with AI, with the technologies coming out. We have the ability to terraform, clean up our planet, and create a beautiful planet that works for all of us in a very short period of time. But it's a choice if we're going to do it or not. It's up to
Yeah.
us.
Yeah. So, what are okay? So, you just mentioned a few things that you think are changing, but I'm curious about people like the main things that we're so conditioned to be in, for hundreds of years. The value of money, for one thing,
Hmm.
and what we associate money with. It doesn't mean that I'm not going to pay for a product, but the idea of what statue status money
Hmm.
brings, like these belief systems that we have tied to money. So, and that's just an example. What do you think are these basic, because that's very much a core of who we are as the human race.
Hmm.
So, other things, maybe not just money, but what are these really deep seated, everyday things that we've fallen into that you see or you feel are going to be breaking away?
Yeah, so there's three things that come to mind here, and we'll break them down, is scarcity, ego, and hierarchy. Okay. So first thing is the scarcity mindset is that yeah, having less than and living in a world where we feel there's less resources allows for the monetary system to amplify, and the neutral energy of exchanging money becomes utilized in a way that amplifies our scarcity. People have without. When we have these technologies come out, plus even without these technologies, what we already have on the planet, if the greed wasn't at the level it was, we could have shelter for everybody. We can have food for everyone. Think about how much money goes. The money spent in the military industrial complex every single year can feed the whole planet 3 times over in that one year, right?
Yeah.
Fear, right? This fear keeps this controlled. And you know what? Most of that money doesn't actually get spent in defense because it gets lost. $2 billion gets lost because they dropped the wrong thing and gave it over to the Taliban, something like that. Like
Yeah.
there's so much corruption going on. So the scarcity mindset is definitely one thing that is going to be shifting. Now the ego is also a neutral element, but the ego can be amplified because it's the separated part of ourselves, and we need to communicate from the separated part of ourselves to convey ourselves. Otherwise, we just be like merged into one bubble or something.
Yeah.
So the hijacking of the ego to amplify and prove something to ourselves and to others based on trauma of either this life or past lives, based on trying to make sure that I like in everybody that I see, I'm trying to prove myself to my dad. Therefore, I need to be this successful. You know what I mean? And that's
I
just
do.
one out of a million traumas that are out there that could do that.
Yeah.
Or even based on even traumas beyond that you can release from somatic therapy as well. And now hierarchy is the other one. Now to get to the point of like the money thing, and people like having this status based on money. The age of the Kali Yuga had three themes to it. The Kali Yuga being the Dark Ages, which is the last few thousand years. It's hierarchy, delusion, and authority. Okay, so delusion: what's right is wrong, what's wrong is right. Right. Authority: giving up your power to authority. Hierarchy: everything's based on hierarchy. Governors, mayors, kings, sovereigns, God. Right. The energy of the Dwarpa Yuga, which is the next age that we're moving into, that we're actually fully in right now, but it just takes a while before we like anchor into it, is the age of sovereignty, and the age of energy. And the age of sovereignty literally is really funny because it's a play on words. Because remember, we used to call our kings and queens the sovereign, and
Mhm.
now we're becoming realizing we have our own sovereignty, so we're all becoming our own kings. That's actually comes to mind. That's like a crown chakra reference right there, right? Like activating the crown. So so I feel like that's what's happening. And a lot of things that are proving to be that way in the world, people be like, well, that's not happening. Is one, for example, even during COVID, for example, a lot of people were set on the same on the same level. People that had these big status jobs could no longer generate money. It really did wake up a lot of people, and they reflected on what they are, not everyone, but many people, what they are without their jobs, what they are without what they identify with, right? So, so that's one element of, that crumbling, and the other one is celebrity stardom is crumbling. That was also hierarchical as well. Wanting to be like the celebrity, wanting to be like this, wanting to be like the musician, realizing the secrets and the corruption behind this whole institution, behind the veil, allowing for people slowly but surely to, I feel, take their power back.
Yeah, yeah, I agree with everything you just said. So I know that there's been a number of people that have said that this has been predicted for eons. I'm one of them. My Akashic masters. There's been plans for thousands of years for this shift, but in ancient text, like you had mentioned, this transformation was written in ancient text, so
Hmm.
it was predicted.
Yeah.
So what text did this was it predicted in, and who did the predicting?
So many different texts around the world. I'll just name a few. So let's say the Mayan, for example. A lot of the codices have been, lost and destroyed. And we just did a whole interview about the Mayans. And is what's interesting is a lot of the codices, which is like the basically the information of the Maya. We've heard about them being destroyed, but I just found out recently that a lot of the ones that we found were actually they were forced in the ancient times to rewrite their own codex so that they could be discovered in the future by the Spanish. Do you get what I'm
Oh,
saying? So basically, they made the Mayans rewrite their own history and leave them to be discovered later, which is very interesting. So a lot of it's been lost to time, but their calendar still has the 2012 calendar is only one little piece of a bigger puzzle, cycles within cycles, tracking the cycles of our solar system, our galaxy, and even potentially our galaxy around the center of the universe, however that works, and maybe even beyond that. So, and all of these things, maybe we can't find the information that they might have once had on what happens during that time, but we can find the dates and alignments that they're saying that there are shifts on the earth, right? Like 2012 was the beginning of a new age. It said the end of ages. So a lot of people translated it to the end of aging, meaning we're going to die, but it was the end of ages, right? And now we go to the Norse mythology and the Vikings, and the Vikings speak about a time when there was going to be a great awakening, and the gods are going to come down to Earth and help us go to Valhalla, and bring Valhalla down to Earth, and that just happens to be right now, right? Then we also have, I'll just mention two more. We have which was the other one I wanted to share? Oh, Greeks. So there was a poet in ancient Greece. I think his name was Hesiod. I forget his name right now, and what they did, they also spoke about the four ages. So many ancient cultures spoke around the four ages, right? The different types of evolutions we go under, and how it's a cycle of 25 to 26,000 years. And so in the Greek text, it talks about the type of human that exists in each age. So it says man will be like blah 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 blah. Man will be like blah blah blah. It tells you like the struggle we're going through in this age. It talks about us breaking free from a lot of the victim consciousness of the old age. And then the last one I want to speak about is the one I spoke about in the last question, is when I said Dwarpa Yuga and Kali Yuga, is the Indian text, where we have the zodiac cycle of the 25 to 26,000 years again. And this one is really interesting because it's the only one, as far as I can tell, that actually has the dates in the calendar of when this occurs. And it goes back to certain. It goes back. You can track it back, so it's a calendar where you can keep going back into different ages because it tells you how long each age is. And that one tells you there's actually two conflicting calendars there. One of them says we exited the Kali Yuga in 1900 something. One of them says we exited in 1700, and it's not too far off. But within that Indian text, it says there's a 200-year transitionary phase in between ages. And that 200-year transitionary phase is the time where slowly but surely the old system collapses and people start anchoring in the new one. So that's just a few. Honestly, if you went online and literally just typed, give me a list of all the ancient civilizations that spoke about time being in cycles and us evolving in consciousness, which I did, and I got 150 of them in my
wow.
one of my presentations. I just
Yeah.
told him to stop because there was too many, so I just stopped.
So, where do you think that these prophecies, I think is what I'm going to call it, the prophecies came from seers? Did it come from galactic beings, or who do you think provided this information?
That's interesting because I would think it could be both, right? Because we do have information that these seers and these prophets are the ones that said it as well, right? So another
Hmm.
example is the whole Christ returning, the second coming of Christ. That's an evolution story of ascension. That's an ascension story. That's why people say the Christ consciousness. And even if you go to the Jewish people, they believe that Jesus wasn't the last Messiah, and they're waiting for their prophet, and he's supposed to be coming down right now as well, right?
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
and and Yeshua supposedly said, "I'm coming back." So if he was a prophet, he kind of told people, "Hey, I'm coming back," right? And
Hmm.
now also there's three things. I would say prophets and seers, and then I would say extraterrestrials that already at a dimension where they could see the construct a little more harmoniously, right? um, and they could see what's going on. Some of them being the architects of it in the first place, right? And the other one is mathematics and science. If you can track this mathematically, you can track the position of our solar system through our galaxy, and when it dives into the photon belt, what happens after it dives in the photon belt? What happens when it comes up? It's all like every single thing, etherically, spiritually, emotionally, physically. I feel all backing up that there's a shift going on the planet.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting that you're talking about math and science because I feel like even though, and like I had with the Akashic records, for example, Irving Laszlo actually was able to acknowledge or to create the understanding that there actually is an Akashic field,
Mm.
with doing quantum physics and being able to understand that, doing all the numbers, doing the math, doing the science. So I feel like it is part of everything. I think a lot of times that we might not be advanced enough in our human mind to be able to fully understand that these sequence of events can be deduced
Mhm.
or to be analyzed by these things that have been created. Math and science. I mean, how old is math and science? Sacred
Exactly.
geometry. How far
Yeah.
back does that go?
Hmm.
It's kind of who we are. When we get right
Exactly.
down to it.
Yep.
Yeah. So when we talk about the extraterrestrials, so first of all, how do you feel that the extraterrestrials have been involved with all of this shift? And since the beginning, when we go back to these sacred documents, like you said, we feel like the ETs had some guidance in helping to help the humans understand what's going to be unfolding.
Hmm.
So throughout time, how do you think, or what do you think the role is that ETs have played up to today?
Mm. Honestly, so many. Because if you're saying ETs, you're talking about probably a number that we can't even express of how many different beings are
Okay.
interacting or have interacted with Earth. So, and like, let me just name a few. um, because right now, let me just name the general one. Is I feel that on some level we have beings around us all the time, little things. Even probably, I jokingly say I wouldn't even doubt if there's a small ET with a petri dish catching the skin falling off our bodies so they can experiment on it. Like we are like a petri dish of information and experimentation. Maybe some people may say that there's some um, nefarious ways that's happening, but I'm talking just in general, the fact that we are an abundance of expression in physicality, emotionally, in so many different ways that many beings throughout the cosmos are extremely interested in learning from us, or seeing what's going on within a genetic makeup. So that's one thing that's probably going on all the time. Now, in regards to our ancient history, it seems that there were beings that were not only involved in the creation of this matrix, of this system, of this construct. There's those that came in and hijacked certain elements of it and then embedded themselves in it. There's beings that came from different types of ways. There's some beings that are sleeping themselves awake on Earth. They're in a stasis chamber on their planet, but they're awake on Earth. There's other beings that came through stargates and portals to come to Earth to incarnate. There's actual beings that look human that are walking the Earth, and then there's ETs like us that are souls that came from other places that came through the womb portal to have an experience of Earth. So there's been a lot of interaction. It's almost like the greatest story never told. That fact that we're not even like fully aware of the intricacy of what's going on, and the blinders have been put on our eyes in such a deep level, right? And so now what their involvement is right now is, I feel, and something that I've been saying lately, I love to say this one, is that Earth is the Library of Alexander for extraterrestrial DNA, meaning that many different beings in our galaxy, if not all of them, I don't know because I'm not omnipresent, but in this moment, but I would say that a, they have donated DNA to the Earth experience to see how it manifests. And in some level, not because on a lot of planets we have like one race of beings, we have one etheric beings, we have a few different civilizations. The amount of diversity on Earth with species variation doesn't exist. Okay, so these beings have all donated. There's ant beings, there's cockroach beings, there's mantis beings, there's feline beings. They've all donated DNA. And now it's almost like watching to see how all of these beings in the galaxy, a lot of them had feuds with each other in the galaxy, are their DNA has become physical manifestations on Earth, and we're working out how we can all live in harmony together. That's the grand experiment. But the crazy thing is that they're our ancestors, because they literally came from a higher dimension. They created lower dimensions, because at one point the lower dimensions weren't even created. They had to create them themselves. They created these dimensions, almost like how we created a computer that never existed and then we made a game in it, right? They created these dimensions, and then they fractalized themselves to experience themselves simultaneously in this dimension, right? And now in our future, we become the ancestors that made us in the first place. Well, not only are we they're our ancestors, but they're also our descendants, because we end up going into the stars, and then guess what happens? We increase in dimension, eventually ending up in the dimensions of the beings that created us, inhabiting the planets that they inhabited before they came to create us, and then we start creating life like they did. you know?
Yeah, that's it's hard for us to fully comprehend that in our today form and
Mhm.
on this time frame, but it is interesting. And when you're talking about the cockroach beans, I keep envisioning the little cockroach walking on two legs with a little hat on.
That's so funny.
I don't know where that's coming from.
That's the cutest way to look at it, though.
Yeah. So we have at this time, with again with all of this craziness going on, I know that we have galactic helpers. And what what do you see, or what do you feel is going on the galactic realm, helping us to navigate through this time? And the reason why I'm asking this, let me be a little bit more specific. I have so many people come to me that ask me about how in the world can these wars be going on? How can, we such horrible things be happening at this time, and we're supposed to be elevating into a happier place.
Mhm,
My guides always call moving up to the fifth dimension, we call it moving into the institution of joy. We're supposed to be moving into our happy place.
mhm,
And but I've had the visions of like this huge dome over Ukraine and Russia. And when these, when all of the bombings and the stuff is happening, I've seen like the angels underneath this dome shooting around, doing what they need to do on that level. But on top of the dome, I've seen the galactic beings in their warrior outfits, more or less just observing. And
mhm.
I'm sure protecting and observing. So when I'm seeing this, how are you interpreting the bigger grand scheme of what you think that these ETs are doing to help us get through this time?
Yeah, well, firstly, when I see chaos, I see opportunity. And when I see a lot of these things happening in the world, an analogy I like to use is, so technically, if we're going to another dimension, right, and the science behind that is it's another temporal dimension. So we're increasing in another temporal dimension. So we're no longer limited to the third dimensional space of time, and we're moving up. So if that's the case, technically you could say, well, how do you get to another dimension? Well, you go through a wormhole, or you go through a black hole, or some sort of quantum device, right? And when you go through a quantum device, are you able to take your baggage with you through that device, or the closer and closer you get to the event horizon before you go through the wormhole, all the experiences, all the baggage, all the trauma, everything that's literally tied into your body, right? Think of this scientifically. All this trauma and all this pain from eons and eons of expression, all in our bodies. As we get closer to the event horizon and go to the wormhole to the fifth dimension, it's literally shaking all this trauma out of us. And it's shaking it so much that the things that are the most hidden within ourselves and within society needs to be fully expressed, not hidden, not swept under the rug, in order for us to move through to the next reality. And that's what's happening with wars for sure. But that's what's happening again with celebrity stuff. That's what's happening with the Jeffrey Epstein stuff. That's what's happening with P Diddy stuff, right?
Mhm.
All these things are, and it's almost like, well, look how crazy the world is, look what happened with the Epsteins or whatever, right? But the thing is, that was happening for ages. It was just swept under the rug and hidden from us. What's coming to the surface is there's two reptilian years back to back. We just had a dragon year, we're in the snake year. These are two deep shadow working years. And now, so during the shadow working years, it's spring cleaning. It's time to bring things to the surface. And then next year we go into the horse year, and then maybe we can start galloping off into the sunset. Who knows, right? But stuff is
Yeah.
coming up, and a lot of us have had our blinders on because we're so focused on survival, fight or flight, having to get food on the table, shelter over our head. And in many ways, in the good old days when people thought, maybe in the 80s was a nice time in the US or something like that, or early 90s, the good old days were there was a lot of facades and illusions cast over the eyes because of how much corruption was going on behind the scenes globally, including the fact that there's been a 70 plus year cover up in the government on the technologies that they've been achieving ever since 1933 on UFOs, so it's coming to surface, and a part of the turmoil is an unexpressed um, part of ourselves that are kind of in awe and gasping at the craziness of what is behind the scenes, right? Now, when it comes to war, you got to realize we're at the most peaceful time we've ever had on Earth. This this is the most peaceful time in known history. In known history, okay, since like the fall of Atlantis.
Yeah.
That do you imagine like back in the day, Alexander the Great or the Mongolian emperors had so much control over their people that they wouldn't just fight for them; they would walk thousands of miles across continents, walking with their armor on and their swords, with hand-to-hand combat, literally going inside of someone. Okay, fast forward that to now, most people don't want to do that, even people that in military. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And back then, they were convinced with the mission, whereas now a lot of people in the military just do it because they're part of the government and they've got loyalty towards that government and they need to. But there's so many people that, like for example, how many military people came out after Iraq and said how upset and sad they were that they had to be there, but they had no choice because they were part of the military. You know what
Yeah.
I mean?
Yeah. I do.
So
I do.
what I'm getting at is here the consciousness shifting. You got to look at the intricacies of what's going on, and so. But now about why is there still war happening on this planet? It's interesting if you look at the cycles of time and you look at the shifts between the 200 years. The greatest wars in all of human history happened during those times. And
Oh,
I don't know if we're even the Mahabharata and the Trojan War were at shifts of ages, right? So I'm not sure if that's a human thing where we need to have a fight to get to the next level, right? But maybe in the lowest of dimensions it happens a lot. The lowest
yeah.
of expressions on Earth.
Yeah. Well, it's so hard for people. I'm glad you explained that the way that you did because we are I mean, there's a lot of traumatic events that are happening on the earth. A lot of things that I've witnessed that I it makes my heart so sad. But we don't know what it was like to live in the 1500s. We don't really understand, that this seems so dramatic or traumatic at this time with the conflicts that are going on, but also being able to recognize just what you said, that there's fewer conflicts today than there's ever been. And I think
Hmm.
that that's important for people to remember as
Yeah.
well.
And
So,
the comfort that we have is more than we've ever had on earth as well. And most of what's happening now is the fear and the psychological warfare that is taking people to that level. And the real culprit, the real thing here is this divide and conquer mentality,
yeah,
making you believe that you, in like Russia and Ukraine, how interesting is that? They are literally genetically ancestors to each other,
yeah,
right? And
yeah,
they have convinced themselves so much that they're not anything like the other one, and they're trying to like not accept that, whereas we can even track back not too far ago that they were, right? And so it's almost like you're fighting a part of yourself that you're not willing to integrate.
yeah, yeah. Yeah. So, well, you kind of brought up, well, you brought up dimensions, and
Hmm.
I actually have a list of questions. So I'm going to skip some of my questions. I'm going to come back to those because you just opened the segue into the dimensions.
Okay.
So what do you think a dimension is? What's your definition of a dimension?
So my definition is a frequency of experience slash a data set of information. And the reason why I would say I don't like to use hierarchy, because I am very much in a believer that the hierarchy was the old ways, and I don't even think that certain ETs that are beyond this dimension even look at things hierarchical. Because, for example, many beings and ETs that are living in different planets haven't had the soul experience of the souls that have come to earth that have experienced so much. And as Bashar says, he says that his people call us the masters of limitation, and they don't mean that in a condescending way. They mean that in
Mhm.
that, like, we came down here to master how to be limited. Like, what a great soul to do that. So just because we're living and experiencing a lower dimension doesn't make us lower than, right? So
Yep.
I will say a dimension of experience, because there's an experience that is available to the collective consciousness in that dimension once you're there, that have certain rules, regulations, and laws of physics, and that we all abide by within that. And then a data set of information. Right now, we have all the information available in the third dimensional, fourth dimensional space available to us that we can get into and we can research into. When we get into the fifth dimensional space, we now see reality, and our perception of space time and consciousness shifts. And as that shifts, more information is then allowed to be received by us. For example, if we were to get to that level, all of a sudden you might know the galactic history of Earth. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And what different beings were like. You might know God a little more. You might not be into organized religion anymore, because now you're seeing like what source really is, and it's not based on any limited criteria that's exclusive to one group. And then when you get higher and higher in dimension, all of a sudden you have relay communication with source, not like a channeler on Earth, but an actual person that can go visit source in the energy field and have direct contact. Because who's to say that we're not so fragmented from source that even our relay communication of source isn't just one of its emissaries? That's a representation of it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
so yeah, that's in a nutshell what I feel it is.
Okay, so do you, and I'm making this very basic for our 3D minds. Do
Mhm.
you, um, do you see the dimensions like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12? Is that how you see the dimensions?
So I see that as what we have labeled it on Earth,
Right. Yeah.
and we can use that as a guide. But there is so many different types of dimensions. There's parallel dimensions, right?
Yeah.
There's dimensions within the physical universe. There's dimensions within the construct of the Earth experience that's exclusive to Earth. There's the dimension of no dimension. There's the void. There's a void within our galaxy, and then a void within the universe that is stacked on top of each other. So
Uh,
dimensions is such a loose word, we can use it in so many ways. But if we're talking about like the dimensional experience of Earth and what we can achieve on Earth, then yeah, we could look at it as that kind of hierarchical way, where we have, for example, three dimensions, right? Is length, width, height. Yeah,
mm,
length with height, that's everything, right? Fourth dimension, time space. Oh yeah. So the fourth dimension is a person within the three. Without the next person inside of it, the object inside of it, there is no fourth dimension. It's just three dimensions without any depth to it or anything happening. Fifth dimension, we get another temporal time. We get another point in time space. Time is no longer linear. Now time becomes more fluid. And so that's what occurs as we shift in dimensions. Time becomes more fluid, age becomes more fluid. We see death in a different way. We're more conscious of life after death and what we've been in other lives. And then we eventually get to the void within the earthly construct. And then the void in the earthly construct is when time just completely evaporates. And I'm not going to pretend to know what happens in that one.
So, okay, so I'm curious to know, how do we know what dimension we're in?
So I would say that how we know is a tricky one, because anybody could say that, okay, this is the dimension we're in. But when it comes to looking at it from a spiritual and a physics standpoint, it would be four, because we at least know we're in three, because this is not two-dimensional space. This is three dimensions: length, width, height. And then we at least know we're in fourth because we're in time space, right? We're doing this here. Now, if we look at the metaphysical understanding and the physics understanding that the fifth dimension is a temporal space, a temporal dimension, so space time, that means time will no longer be so linear, and we wouldn't perceive reality as we do beginning, middle, and death,
Mhm.
right? So, so from that understanding, I would say that we're getting to a point where when we get that other ported dimension, we are going to really know that we're there, because our belief, mourning will stop. We won't be mourning death in the same way. Our lives will be extended in a longer way. Um, and I, you know, seeing time as I see it, which is linear on Earth, as most people do, it's almost like unfathomable of how we could perceive reality without linearity,
Yeah.
because it's a paradox, because we're still moving forward in a progression of evolution. Technically, that's a
Mhm.
linear movement, but then we're perceiving time in a different way than it is. And a good example might be, you might not be able to perceive it here, but you can code some sort of thing like that in a video game, where things become more like dreamlike, and you're able to actually manipulate space time even more. Within the dimensions that we're in right now, we technically have been a victim to the elements, meaning we need the sun to be a certain level, we need our temperature to be a certain level, we need a certain amount of nutrients in the nights in our oxygen so we can survive. When we get into a higher state in a higher dimension, we then become the masters of the elements. So what I feel is going on is we are becoming masters of the fourth dimension. For lack of a better term, we've been a victim to the fourth dimension. What is the fourth dimension? Time space. We're a victim to time space. Why? Because we die. And two, because we literally need the earth to be in a specific place within our solar system for the earth to even survive, right? Like time, space. And when we shift from that, we no longer are a victim to the elements, and our planet can be in other places. We could move through time in a different way, and we control the elements rather than the elements control us, because we're realizing that we are the coders of the simulation, you know.
Mhm.
And a lot of us have most of us on Earth have forgot we're the coders and we're the actors on the stage acting.
Yeah.
And so part of the dimensional shift is us having the realization that we're actors on a stage that forgot we're acting, but we forgot we're the script writers, we forgot we're the directors. So it's us remembering that we can do it all. And once we do that, as I like to say, we're like Neo in the Matrix. We can
Yeah.
bend space time at that point.
Well, okay. So since you just said Matrix,
Hmm.
that's my
All
next subject. You just led us right into it. So, what is the Matrix? What's your definition?
right. So the Matrix it comes from the word mother, ma. Okay, so it doesn't, and a lot of people consider the Matrix as a bad thing, but it's more like the best way to scientifically explain it is more like a very advanced video game that we created, and then we put VR goggles on, and then and the VR goggles. Then, like, imagine you having a VR game. Okay, you put the VR goggles on, but the VR goggles are coded in a way that once you put it on, the first thing you'll see in the game is you coming out of a womb.
Mm.
That's the best way to explain it, right? But then the VR game or the game has multiple levels, and at the end of every level, you meet the boss, the final boss, which is the shadow self of that level, of that game. A part of you that you haven't sat with and looked at yet, and certain things that you need to transcend or grow from in order to go to the next level. So, and each of those levels could be one dimensional experience, just another one dimensional experience. So, and the game could have, for example, a Mario game. Imagine Mario's playing this game and he falls through one of his tunnels, and then in the game he dies in the game, and now the game's coded in a way that his little soul comes out of the game, and now for the next round of that game, you're Mario as a ghost, okay? And now you're a ghost Mario going around, but the whole thing is you need to beat that lesson at the end of that game so you can go through the tunnel after the big boss, and then when you come out of the tunnel, now you're back on the next part of that game, but you're back in a body, right?
Mhm.
So the matrix is multi-layered, multifaceted, and not all of it is hard and challenging. There's fifth dimensional aspects to it. There's higher dimensional aspects to it. There's the realm of ghosts. There's near-death experiences on it. There's a life review panel on it. There's ways to transcend and get out of the game, but the matrix is so multi-layered that many times when you think you're out of it, you're still in it, because you're having a beautiful experience of freedom, thinking that you've left this game, but you've just left the harder chapter of it all. So there are ways to exit the simulation, so to speak, and go to other realities, and those are have been gifted to us and put around the world as tools from many ancient prophets. Buddha was one of them. He gave us one of the best tools to exit the simulation and clear what he said was karma and clear what he called sangharas. You know, so that's one aspect of the matrix. I'll say one other thing. Now, Earth's matrix originally was created to have cycles of time, which means a devolution and an evolution of consciousness based on the position of our solar system in our galaxy. Because not only do we go around our galaxy, but we also dive up and down the photon belt, which is the milk of the Milky Way galaxy. We dive up and down. It's been created in a beautiful pattern for us to have an evolution and devolution, right? 13,000 years up, 200 years in, 13,000 years down. That's pretty much what our galaxy does. So that also, the way our solar system was created also assisted in creating this matrix-like system based on the celestial energies around us. Now, during that process, about 100 million years ago, there was an infiltration from Orion, and these beings from Orion came in, and they played the long game. They messed with dinosaur DNA. They messed with other types of DNA in order to make it that the Earth could shift in consciousness, that beings could incarnate with their memories intact. Okay, they
Hmm.
did it. They did it for themselves because they were trying to escape the Orion Wars, but it actually evolved the planet to a level that we're at now. However, when they came to Earth, what I like to say is Earth cycles of time, evolution and devolution, was a Ferris wheel before they came. Then it became a roller coaster. So, what did they do by making the Matrix a roller coaster? Well, they allowed us to have the most depths of the darkest experiences, only then prepping us to have the most lightest of the experiences as well. Because in a world of amnesia, the only way to achieve the polar opposite in the light is to experience the polar opposite in the dark. So even their infiltration and what they did to further this matrix actually had an effect that assisted humanity and assisted Earth in being a school now where so many advanced souls come to, because they know that by going through the hardships on Earth, they're able to achieve the greatest of heights.
Mm. There's a whole lot in that. So you mentioned Buddha, and that Buddha had a way to clear
Yeah,
karma. So
yeah.
what is that method? If you can just do a real quick rundown version.
Yes,
I know there's
yes.
a lot more to it.
So basically, and it's not even like hidden out there. So Buddha, first of all, Buddhism is not Buddha's teachings, right? Buddhism is basically a lot of like old school traditions from Tibet and other places put into Buddha's teachings hundreds of years after. Buddha never even taught chanting. Chanting came 500 years after Buddha, right? I love chanting, but it wasn't Buddhism. So he came up with something called vipassana meditation, right? And there's free vipassana centers around the world, little plug here for Vipassana. There are free centers around the world. You can go for 10 days and meditate and do his technique for 10 days. It's so Buddhist that it's not Buddhist because that's Buddha, right?
Yeah.
And basically, what he would do is he said, I am only here to teach you how to meditate and liberate suffering. That's all he said. Well, how do I do this? How do I do this? Meditate. How do I meditate? Now, this is what he taught people to do. The first few days, you sit and you observe sensation from your nose to your lips. All you do is focus, you're completely alert. All you do is focus the air hitting your lips, fine tuning your senses. After that, you then begin to slowly scan your body from head to toe, going slowly down, up and down your body until you fine tune your senses enough to scan your whole body piece by piece, part by part. Part of your head, here, with your consciousness, scanning it all. You start feeling all the sensations in your body, and you get to a point where you don't react to any of your sensations. Okay, so you got an itch in your nose, you don't react. You got your back is hurting, you need to adjust, you don't react. You have all these sensations, gross sensations, hardcore sensations, and after years or months or however long, because the Buddha did this for his whole life, all of a sudden the sensations stop becoming gross sensations, and all you do is feel subtle waves. And then you can pierce through your body and you can feel inside of your heart how that's feeling, over here how you can feeling. So he did this for 20 I mean tens and tens and tens and tens of thousands of hours, if not hundreds of thousands, right? And as you're doing that, you're not reacting. All of the subtle energies are the sangharas on the quantum level exiting your cellular memory from all of your incarnations. First, it starts with this incarnation. And because I've done this 6 times, 10 days each time, I've seen memories of my life that I thought I completely lost because you're in complete silence while you do this. And in the centers, the men and the women are separated, and you're just meditating like 8 hours a day, 6 hours a day. And so then all these sangharas, which are impurities, start coming out. And then Buddha said that they would get released from the kalapas. Moving into the future, kalapa translates to subatomic particle. Buddha
Mm.
was literally an organic quantum physicist. He even had the terms for subatomic particle. So you're releasing it all, and then after you do that, after you clear the karma of this life, you begin releasing the trauma and the karma from all your past incarnations, liberating yourself from the construct of this matrix, allowing you to go to nirvana. So that was his teaching.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I like that. I think it's important for people to understand how to become more aware of our senses.
Hmm.
Um, so when we're talking about the matrix, is there a reason why we need to be aware of what matrix we're in? Do we need to push ourselves to get out of a different of one matrix to get into another? What does the matrix play in our lives? I mean,
Yeah,
is it a goal for us to get out of it?
I don't think there's any goal at this point. I feel like feeling is healing, and to fully be human and be here in this experience. And just the bottom line is have compassion for yourself, love for yourself, and then have compassion and understanding and kindness for others. That's really the only thing to truly live by, rather than feeling that there's a need to escape something, because that's what the universe does. The universe is one big Xerox machine. The more you put out of something, the more you get back with that exact same thing. So the more you feel that there's something that you got to leave and transcend, the more it's going to happen. And now it doesn't mean that there's atrocities in the world that you forego because this is the case. When you get to a place of non-reaction, because that's the whole thing with Buddha, you don't react to the sensations and the pain. You become the master of it all, right? When you get to a place like that, you are now able to have more of an effect on helping yourself and other than when you're in the emotion of reaction, right? So the best thing to do is to come to the 0 point within yourself and that own stillness, and then it will happen. And something that's funny is like another paradox, because I love the word paradox. The the biggest the only way to create an ascended world and to go and live in an ascended world is to find the beauty in the moment. So it's
Yeah.
like you're not going to create it if you're always like, this is sucks so much, I need to get there. If you see the beauty in the people around you, the plants and the trees outside, the ocean, humanity in general, and then more and more of us start doing that, that's when the world externally in our future will manifest that world that we want to be in.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. So another thing that you are interested in is sound and frequencies.
Hmm.
So let's jump into the frequencies because I do think that frequencies have everything that we've talked about. I think frequencies have a part in that as well.
Yes.
So, how do you feel that frequencies? What role do you think frequencies play in our life?
Yeah,
I'm not
well,
sure that's
everything. Yeah, no, I understand. So, firstly, everything is vibration. That's what we got to realize. That on the subatomic level, all things vibrate. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was God, and the Word was with God. Is not just some sort of Bible stance. That's literally talking about the science of creation and how we all came from sound, right? So
yep.
everything is sound. And once we realize that, then we realize everything is emanating a frequency. All things affects us, whether it's negative frequencies, whether it's certain types of music, whether it's certain types of things that we eat, because everything has a frequency as well. We infuse it into us, and we become that frequency becomes a part of us. So to answer your question on what do um, I think it was about what do we do with the frequencies around us, something along those lines. Is the first understanding is that all things are vibration, and therefore to create an environment around you that is a harmonic vibration over a disharmonic vibration probably would be very important for your own mental health and your own evolution, right? And I don't
Mhm.
like to look at frequencies as higher and lower. I like to look at it as disharmonic and harmonic. There's been a
Yeah.
lot of disharmonic, like even the frequencies from the media, even the frequencies from war and from governments are disharmonic fear-based frequencies to make us stop tapping into our true potential.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
we yet the understanding of the fact that we're all sound is going to be a huge breakthrough in our new technologies in the future, how we're going to heal ourselves through without needing medication on the level that we need right now. It truly is the number one realization that is going to help us not only shift in consciousness but also help us heal a lot of mental issues and physical.
Yeah. Well, you just answered 4 questions. So my next question is, how do they affect our experience on Earth, which you
Yeah.
just mentioned? The next, how do they affect our health, which you just
Mhm.
mentioned? And then how will we use them, use and how will we use and benefit from frequencies in the future, which you just touched on. But I want to dig into that
Yeah.
before I let you go, because I think that a lot of people, I know that medicine is going to change. We're not going to
Mhm.
be so prone to use pharmaceuticals like we
Yeah.
have been in the past. So, how do you see frequency being used to help us heal?
Okay, so
Help-
so many ways. First of all, let's just say like with frequencies that can help you with anxiety, with depression, right? Frequencies that can help combat, and these actual things already exist, and I've seen them. And there's frequencies that can combat cancer cells and sicknesses. There was a new video, actually, actually a few years old now, where they have this sound frequency that they can send in the body, and what it does is it corners all the cancer cells and extracts them because those cancer cells don't like the frequency, and all the cancer cells then get together in one area where they've been spread all over the body, and then they'll be able to extract them from that area,
Mhm.
right? So it's helping with that data transfer, and then don't forget instantaneous communication across the universe because quantum physics and entanglement, all data is available all the time, right? So even traveling through space and anti-gravity, these things are using frequencies conveying information. And then not only that technology, but the fact that we emanate frequencies from ourselves, from our mind and consciousness. Telepathy is an eventual thing that's going to happen, and that is also a frequency that we're going to be able to tap into.
Yeah, yeah. So we have covered a lot of information.
Yeah, we have.
Do you think, was there anything that I might have missed that you feel is really important at this time for people to understand?
We'll just go back to the beginning, really, about what you were saying, that people have contacted you, messaged you, and then they're curious about how are we evolving, basically, if we're seeing so much craziness in the world. And really, right now, what matters is a perspective shift. You know, things are shifting so much, and are you so in? Are you do you identify with so much of this old system, the institutions of it? Do you identify with what you do for work rather than what you are as a human being, right? Do you spend time with your relationships and cultivating connections and creating some sort of peace in your life, or is your life in a way amplifying the opposite of that, right? These are all things that every single individual, whether they're awake in spirituality or not, are looking into, and these are fundamentally universal concepts that we all want this peace. So even though there's all this chaos coming towards us and being fed to us, can you have a perspective and hold in yourself compassion for all, and can you see yourself in the other, right? Because that's the crazy thing, because they want you to hate different groups of people, you know what I mean? And some people, yeah, some people are not that really cool, but if you can even see the inner child and the wounds in the other people rather than coming from a place of hate and reaction. Because what does hate and reaction ever do? Does it solve things? The only way to see things differently is by able to see why things became the way it is, who became the way it is, what people really need, what is their need, why is that group of people supporting this guy over this guy, right? What did they really need? What is this thing that's in their soul that is not being fed or healed, right? And so the only thing I really have to say is to focus on seeing yourself in the others, especially the others that you inherently disagree with. You know what I mean? Because we're all souls on this earth trying to figure it out, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think exactly, you know, what you just said is, I think it's the message that all of us that are in this world have been told over and over and over and over and over again, regardless of the source of information.
Hmm.
That's it. That's the cherry on top. So Neil, how can people find you and learn more about what you do?
Sure. So they could find me at portal2ascension.org. That's my main website. Has all my events there. I have a course called the Shadow Workers course coming up soon. You go to upcoming events. We do like 2 to 3 events a month. We have one on the Syrians coming up soon. We have one on Orion and the Orion Wars coming up. It's just really very interesting. There's a lot of fun information there. There's history components, and then there's spiritual transcending workshops like my Shadow Workers course, breathwork workshops, chanting workshop, find it all there. And then also my YouTube channel, youtube.com/portal to ascension. We're always putting out some amazing content. And I'll say one last thing. I have my own website now, neilarcturist.com. So if you're interested in having me speak or interview me or something like that, you can check out my personal website, neilarcturist.com.
Awesome. And if you want to see Neil in person, West Virginia,
Mm-hmm.
Princeton, November 14th to the 16th.
Yeah.
Come see us live.
Yeah, it's
So
going to be a good
again,
one. I was there at
yeah,
were you there at the last one?
no.
Oh my
Uh,
God. I've been to a lot of expos and conferences. It was one of the most fun events I've ever been to, with so much love and like purity, and it was just like I felt like I was in a love bubble for 3 days, So
yeah,
hope to see some of you guys there. Lisa and I will both be speaking, and we're gonna have a good time. So thank you again,
yeah.
Lisa, for having me.
Yeah. Thank you. And again, come see us. I can't wait for the event. Um, and you guys, so just remember that Neil's contact information will be at the bottom of the video description. So just scroll down and you can find his website and any other information that you guys will need to know more about Neil. And thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next time.